Today, I want to talk about the power of creative constraints. I've never heard anyone talk about this concept on YouTube, so I'm very excited to bring this to you today because this has helped me make a lot of money in my life. It's going to help me make a lot more money now that I fully understand it. I can actually use this in my business effectively. So I can't wait to share this with you. Let's get right into it. So creative constraints. What you need to understand first is the curse of choice. See, we as humans think that we want more and more choices, and that more variety is always better. But there's a certain point that you reach where you have too many choices and it ends up being a curse. It ends up being negative. Because when we are faced with too many options, our brain can't compute and compare all those options, and we end up just frying. So there's a certain point where too many choices is an absolute bad thing. And I noticed this in my business because I have an editor. His name is Caleb. He's actually not an editor. He's my best friend. He just happens to edit. And Caleb is amazing. And he is a super talented editor. He's been getting better and better and better with all of his edits. But recently, I told him that he could have complete freedom on the videos. He could just grab one of these raw videos, edit whatever he wanted to. The issue with that is he started editing this crazy stuff that looked cool but didn't add any value to the videos at all. It didn't look like a KJ video at all. So by giving him more freedom, he did something completely left field that was super creative, but it wasn't in line with our goals. And even he, after looking back at it, he was like, yeah, I don't know why I did that. Because when you have complete freedom, when you have unlimited choices, it becomes very, very hard to be creative. It's paradoxical. You think having more freedom will give you more creativity, but it doesn't work that way. You see, some artists only use a pencil. They don't have any colors. But what happens? They get really, really creative with their shading. So by having that constraint, they actually get more creative. You'll find this a lot in art. If you look at some of these artists, some people will only use spray paint on a wall. But because of those constraints, they get really detailed with the spray paint. You end up with Banksy. It's amazing, right? So it's all about constraints. And when you have too many choices, things end up going backwards. That's why I call it the curse of choice. So I gave my editor way too many choices, way too much freedom, and it just overwhelmed his head. He couldn't figure out what to do, ended up doing something just crazy. And so how do you actually use creative constraints? Well, the first thing is you need to have aim and focus. You need to understand what is your goal with this task. So for my example, my editor's goal was to add more value to these videos by making concepts more clear with the editing. Instead, he went way off in left field and was doing some crazy stuff that looked like art, but it wasn't adding value to the videos. So you first have to figure out what is your aim or focus with this thing. So for art, it's completely different. Maybe it's just to make people think it's cool, express yourself, whatever. But in business, everything has an aim, everything has a focus. And you need to understand what that focus is. So when we sat down to really analyze why his editing wasn't working and why we weren't happy with it, it was because he was editing for the sake of just doing cool stuff and not adding value to you guys. There's no point in him editing these videos unless it's adding value to the marketplace by helping explain a concept more clearly using editing, or making the value more consumable by it being clean and edited nicely. Not over the top crazy Mr. Beast stuff. That takes away. You have to know what is your focus. What is the focus? And from there you can determine which options to actually focus on. So obviously we don't want to have too many options. We want to bring constraint to this creativity by limiting our options. But in order to decide those options, you need to know what is your aim, what is your focus of this task, this system. Like what is the output you want from this system? So from the editing system, we sat down and thought, all right, man, we don't know anybody who really does this well. We got to figure this out on our own. What do we consider good editing for our goal? It's all about the goal, right? So he can't just edit these crazy animations like some animated channel does, because we're not an anime channel. We provide value, business value, life value. So that was our focus, was value. How do we use editing to increase the value of the videos, to help people understand the concepts more, to actually change your guys' life? And from there, we decided the options. And so when you kind of figure out what my goal is for this thing, you can come up with creative constraints. So what you want to do is you want to constrain the freedom to a certain area of focus. So to make this really tangible, I'll tell you what we did. So when he was editing these videos, he was doing crazy, weird animations and all this stuff. And I said, bro, like, is this adding value to the video? Is this helping explain it, or is this a distraction? And it was a complete distraction. It was going backwards. So if we want to optimize for our focus being value, what are the options we want to use? And so I told him, I said, how about for the next 2 weeks, you focus on nothing but subtitles and zoom ins and zoom outs. Those are the only 2 effects you can do. Keep in mind, guys, Caleb is one of the best editors I've ever seen on YouTube. The dude is insanely gifted. But I'm constraining him to do 2 things, subtitles and push-ins and push-outs. Now, what is amazing, this is what I'm talking about, power. This is so powerful. Whenever you do that, what happens is they start to focus that creativity into those constraints you gave them. So now what he's about to do is he's about to become the expert at subtitles and push-ins and push-outs. That's the only 2 things he can optimize for. So now instead of worrying about these million different effects he could do, he's focused. And he can get really good at these most amazing, beautiful, clean subtitles, pushing in at just the right time. Like, what is the exact frame we need to push in? What is the exact sentence I need to highlight with subtitles? How do I make the subtitles track with the movement and the blur come in at just the right time? Like, you see how you can get so creative in the details. So within the constraints, that's when your creativity really becomes powerful. Now, the nuts thing about this, and I can't really speak on it because we're still testing this, but what I think is going to be insane, this is some sauce here, so you guys who stuck around to the end of this, you're welcome, is every 2 weeks, I'm going to change the constraints. So when he gets masterful at subtitles and push-ins and push-outs, I'm going to say, all right, now it's time for us to work on title animations. I don't know, some kind of example like that. Or color correction. So every 2 weeks, the dude is going to be mastering these different pockets of editing using constraints. He knows exactly what he has to focus on. Instead of having a million options up here, it's very focused. So now he only has a couple options he can work on instead of a million. He's not overwhelmed. He's learning. He's creative. He's producing the focus, like the goal that we want, the aim that we want, which is value. This is going to be so powerful because in a year from now, when we've gone through 100 iterations, 100 different constraints, the dude is going to be just Picasso on the sticks for editing. He's going to know exactly how to do push-ins, exactly how to do subtitles, exactly how to do title animations and effects. And like, he's just going to be a beast. But it all comes from constraining that creativity and focusing it. Because otherwise you have too many options and you end up getting completely lost and you don't do the goal. You're not making progress towards the goal. And this is huge for me as well. Like, I've constrained myself in these videos to a whiteboard in my speaking. So if I want to get more views, the only way I can do that is by learning how to speak like a master and learning how to teach concepts that you guys actually want to you actually want to learn and use in your life. You can notice I fricked up my speaking just then, right? I'm always iterating. But you see how whenever you constrain yourself, you actually become way more creative. Just like the artists who only use a pencil and their shading becomes just S tier. Their shading with a pencil is just insane. You think, how could anyone make that art with just a pencil? Creative constraints. And so use this in your life, in your business. Whatever your goal is, say you want to blow up on YouTube, or you want to, let's just say you want to get leads for your business. What does Hormozy say? It says one product, one niche, one channel. Why? Because it's constraint. You're focused. So instead of doing YouTube and cold outreach and paid ads, like, just focus on one channel. Say, all right, I'm going to focus on nothing but cold outreach. And then focus on one system of cold outreach. Maybe cold email. I'm gonna do nothing but cold email for 1 year. I'm gonna figure out how to get insane deliverability. I'm gonna figure out the exact stimuli to use in my subject line. I'm gonna figure out the perfect body copy. I'm gonna figure out the perfect like video or loom or whatever. I'm gonna figure out the perfect CTA. And if you just constrain yourself and force all your creativity on one thing, you'll become powerful. Because specificity is power. It's focus. And focus, time, energy will crush your goals. So yeah, constrain yourself creatively. Hopefully this helps you guys. I'll see you next video.